Hi, everyone. So, in the work that I do and the work that I share with you, I talk a lot about monitoring our thoughts and our emotions to bring about the life that we crave, that our higher selves has in store for us, and moving away from our ego self, which is one term for it, to get in touch with who we really are and what we're meant to be doing on this planet in this time that we're living in, which is part of this whole new shift in consciousness and awareness. And so, since I started doing this work, I have also evolved in learning and my own experience because I'm a human too, obviously, and I'm going through my own growth as well. And something that I want to share with you and emphasize so much because it is so important is the concept of surrendering, letting go, and allowing what the universe or the higher powers, the divine, whatever you choose to call it, this universal life force, this love, this energy that lives within each of us, part of our souls, part of our light, our higher selves, connected to each other, connected to all kinds of higher entities out there around us, in nature, below us, above us. It's all connected. Um, so what I think that sometimes we miss in this work, in the personal development field, and in the whole, manifestation work, law of attraction, which is one term that I don't love, but it's kind of gets to this, speaks to what we're talking about a little bit here, is that there is a point when we have to simply trust in the powers of the universe or in the divine source that supports us in our lives, and understand that there are things that happen in our life that we may not may not be able to reconcile right away. We might not be able to understand why they're happening. Why is this particular thing happening to me right now when I am just working on my vision, my goal in my life, and this other thing keeps coming up and it's not really what I want to be focusing on right now? Well, that's when something else beyond us is nudging us, is poking at us and saying, listen, this is part of a lesson that you as a soul decided before you came into this life. I happen to believe that we as human beings, as spiritual beings, each decide before each life we have that we have particular lessons we want to learn, and we kind of can go about those in a variety of ways. It can be harder, they can be easier, but when we notice that patterns keep coming up in our life, and sometimes we don't even notice the patterns, but sometimes it's like, well, we don't necessarily need to be consciously in control. We definitely don't need to be consciously in control of everything that happens in our lives. In fact, there is an important element to simply surrendering, letting go, allowing what it is that's happening to just happen to us. And we won't always know why, but it's important just to, from what I've understand in what I've practiced in my own life and what I understand to be true for me at least, is to be open to ask for guidance if that feels right for you, from a higher power, from the universe. You can tap into nature forces. You can tap into the wisdom of animals. There are all sorts of ways. Of course, I happen to talk to spirit guides, angels, God, which is one term for the universal force, which I don't use a lot because it's been so misused in so many ways, but ascended masters like Jesus or Mother Mary or Buddha or Saint Germain. There are so many different beings out there, should I say, entities of benevolence, of love, compassion, wisdom that want to support us. And whether or not that makes sense to you, that resonates with you, that might be a little stretch for some of you, but I have come to the place in my own life where I started with seeing number sequences all over the place, and that may happen to you. You may notice signs on the road, or you may hear songs on the radio, or just meet people and you realize there's a reason for that. There's maybe something deeper going on there. We all have that almost all the time. It's just we kind of don't always notice it. And so what I say to you is that as part of this paradigm shift that we're experiencing right now, is 2016, before a very time of upheaval in our country, the United States, with this election. And while we won't get into that here, I believe that this upheaval time is really important part of our moving into a new era of sharing our collective consciousness with each other, sharing food, sharing resources, being aware that we're higher beings. There are higher souls that we each have a soul. We all have this light within us, but we haven't always been in touch with that. We've been living with a lot of separation and dualities. And while the duality is a natural thing, that doesn't necessarily need to be how we live our lives in every moment. This versus that. You're pro this, you're anti that, you belong to this or you belong to that. And what happens is the fear and anger that it generates often blocks us from accessing our true higher inner selves, which knows what we want in our lives, which knows that we are innately all good. Some of us tend to be a little more further astray from that than others. So the reason I'm saying all this to you now is that I've come to a place in my work where I believe that connecting with this universal life force that we all share is going to be what fuels us forward. So even though we can use our powers of manifestation, of visualizing, of bringing real intention to our thoughts and our beliefs, and that actually is a real thing. From my personal experience, I believe that we really can bring about wonderful things into our life by aligning. It's really about our vibration, our frequency with the other wonderful things that lie out there for us. But what often happens is we block those wonderful things with things like fear, anger, worry. It's a big one for me. But I think what is so important and what we're being asked to do more and more is to acknowledge that there are elements to our lives that we're never going to understand, that there's mysteries out there, there's magic, but we can tap into that magic, to that mystery, to that wonderful source of love that can support us through hard times, through times of uncertainty or scary and wonderful, exciting areas that we maybe thought we never could dive into, or that we've always been afraid of diving into, and now we feel a little bit of a push to do that, but there's a little bit of part of us isn't sure. So really kind of just saying, all right, I'm going to try to tap into my intuition. I'm going to quiet my mind. I'm going to focus on my breath, and allowing that first instinct, that first thought that comes to you, knowing that that's your intuition, that's your higher self. That could even be higher guidance coming to you. But often our ego minds tend to step in soon after that and start to be like, well, I don't know, maybe not, and what about this, what about that? And so the work that I do is really about working with people like you to learn to separate from the ego mind and align with the true inner self, or at least to identify when it's the ego mind or the whatever you call them, those worries, those doubts, negative self-talk, there's a lot of different terms, inner critics, and versus the true higher inner self, which is our intuition, which is connecting with the divine, the source, whatever you choose to call this. But this is, for me, how I've come to a place of contentment and alignment in my life. It doesn't mean that everything's always perfect, because I'm here to learn lessons as well, of course, just like you, like we all are. But I've come to a place of relative peace and accepting that I'm not always going to know why things are happening, but there may be something, if I don't understand, I can ask and trust and keep coming back to it all the time. It's hard. It takes a lot. It takes work. It takes trust. It takes discipline. It takes blending some practical areas of life with the more metaphysical, spiritual areas of life, because we don't exist in a bubble. We of course need to pay the bills and we need to raise our kids. But for me, having a foundation of a trust in the universe as a good place, and faith that there are mysteries that we will not understand, but I'm going to trust that it's all for a higher purpose in my life. So blending those things together is what for me has been the answer for finding the fulfillment that I've sought in my own life, and that I hope to share with you as well. So hope that might help wherever you are in your journey, in your path, in this wonderful adventure of life. And thank you so much for listening.